Sorry of my little quiet voice. I don't think anyone could hear me. So we're just gone. Oh God, so I'm just trying to actually keep this plugged in, but technical issues. There we go. So we're now at 10:32, so we're 2 minutes late starting, but I think given some of the travel problems some of us have had with roads and water on the roads and so on and so forth today, I'm glad we're all here safely, rather than rushing to get here to start at 10:30 as advertised. So I'd like to open the meeting, first of all. I see that we have a member of the public and also Councillor Mitchell. Not sure in which capacity, if you're here as city or county, but you're welcome in whichever capacity. Lovely. Well, you're very welcome. Thank you. And thank you all members for being here today, and to staff as well. Thank you. So first of all, announcements at the beginning of the meeting is that I need to remind those joining remotely, and I see we have certainly Councillor Bukowski and other staff members, but anyone joining remotely, if you could mute your microphone and turn off your camera unless speaking. This meeting is being live streamed, and all speakers are asked to ensure that they are talking into the microphone, and when we finish speaking, try to remember to turn the microphone off. I'm assuming that members have read all the papers in advance of the committee, and okay, so we're not going to be sharing any items any presentations on the screen. I don't know if there are presentations per se, but we won't be doing that until we get to the relevant item. May I ask, as this is a formal meeting, that we all refer to each other by our councillor surnames rather than first names. This is very much in line with our attempts to make sure that any members of the public we actually know who we're talking about. It's all about transparency, okay? And I would also, a final reminder, although I don't think I need to remind people in this particular meeting, that holding individual discussions while others are speaking is quite disruptive, and please can we not do it? But I don't think any of you guys do that anyway. So, but I'll say it just for form. There's no fire drill planned for today. So if the alarm does sound, please leave the room and follow the signs and muster outside as directed. Okay, so first of all, first agenda items, apologies for absence. I have 2 apologies. No, indeed, we have 3. Yeah, 3, sorry. So councillors Brazil, Davis and Thomas are not able to be here today. One is certainly in response to dramatic events with roads in the south of the county. I'm not sure whether Councillor Ledbetter is coming. I've got tentative here, so if he turns up, he will be, of course, most welcome. Okay, any others? That's all, that's everybody, isn't it? Yeah. Oh, I'm so sorry. Of course you can. Of course you can. Okay, you're very welcome.
Well, I'm so sorry to be. Well, I wasn't late, but I was stuck.
Okay, well, I'm going to deal with the minutes of the last meeting while you get yourself settled, all right? Then I'll do some introductions. Okay, so first of all, sorry, moving on then to agenda item 2, declarations of interest. I need to remind members to declare interest at the appropriate time in the meeting when the item is taken. Moving on to agenda item 3, and sorry, half a moment. Those. Agenda item 3 is the minutes of the last meeting. I'm assuming that everybody has read the minutes which have been previously published on the council website. Are members content to propose to accept the minutes as an accurate record of the last meeting? Could I have a proposer, please? Anybody? I'm going to go Councillor Davis, please, and a seconder. Councillor Fife Cook. I should have asked if there are any items of accuracy. I'm so sorry. No. Okay. So I'm just going to sign the papers. Okay, lovely. Hold on half a sec while I sign bits of paper. Sign bits of paper. Got this one. Okay. You need me to take those? No. Okay. Okay. So it's tremendously warm in here. Sorry, excuse me. So, agenda item 4 is items requiring urgent attention. I'm not aware of any. Any come ups? No. Okay. And then we move on to matters for decision as agenda item 5. And you'll see from your report, from the papers for this meeting, that we will be considering the report of the Director of Legal and Democratic Services about the Members' Allowances Scheme on page 1 to 30. So, Councillor Davis.
Sorry, I don't know if you mean to be rude. I don't know who this. You probably can't hear me because I've got a cold. I don't mean to be rude. I don't know who this lady is. Okay, thank you.
But thank you. So that's on pages 1 to 30. We have here Heather Morgan, who's the chair of the Allowances Board, to introduce the report. But as indeed Councillor Davis has just noted, Heather is not someone that you've maybe come across before. So it would be useful if perhaps for everybody, if we just went round the committee and those in attendance to say who we are. So I'm going to start out with I'm Councillor Caroline Lever. I'm chair of this committee, and
Yes, I'm Heather Moore, the Independent Remuneration Panel. I am not a councillor.
lovely. Thank you. I need to press it a bit harder to turn it.
Hi, I'm Jess Bailey, Councillor Jess Bailey, and I chair the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Committee.
I'm Councillor Jackie Hodgson, and I'm a Cabinet Member for Climate Biodiversity. Oh, hang on, Climate Biodiversity and Public Transport. Thank you.
Sue Davis, County Councillor.
Good morning, Councillor Michael Fife Cook. Really nice to see you again. Thank you.
I'm just going to ask officers also to introduce themselves.
Good morning, I'm Maria Price. I'm the Director for Legal and Democratic Services.
Swan, Assistant Director, Democratic Services.
Neil Milne, Clerk to the Procedures Committee.
Morning, Heather. I'm Julia Jones, Governance Manager.
And just to be inclusive, I'm going to just say hello. Would you like to just tell us who you are?
I'm Councillor Michael Mitchell of this council, and I'm here to speak on item 6.
I don't know. Do you want to tell us who you are or not? It's entirely up to you. Okay. Okay. Thank you very much. We welcome your attendance. Thank you. Okay. So on to agenda item 5. I'm going to ask Heather, who. Oh, so sorry.
I just thought it'd be helpful, Chair. Thank you, Heather. I just thought it'd be helpful because this is the first time this committee and a new council have considered the allowances report. So I just wanted to give a little bit of detail on the process. So by law, we have to have an independent panel of which Heather chairs. There are 2 other members on that panel as outlined in the report. They consider members' allowances and they make recommendations. So your job is to have regard to those recommendations. But ultimately today you're going to be making a recommendation to the full council, and this is considered alongside part of the budget papers in February. So it was just to set that context at the outset so you know and understand the next steps. Happy to take any questions on process before Heather goes into the detail of their work.
Okay, thank you. Any questions about process at this point? Oh, lovely. If anything comes to mind, just grab my attention. Thank you. So with no further ado, well, actually, first of all, may I thank you very much indeed, not only for attending today, but actually for all the huge amount of work that you and other panel members put into this work. I know from previous years, and having read reports for the last however many years, it is a massive undertaking, and I don't think any of us should underestimate just how much you put into this. So thank you very much indeed. And if I could hand over to you to present the report, thank you.
Thank you very much, Caroline. Before I go any further, can I just underline what Karen has said? We are an independent panel. We come in from outside from our other jobs to do this. Our job is to recommend, and then it Thank you, Neil. I do have this effect on technology, so I'm not at all surprised. Where was I? Yes, I was just underlining that our job is to recommend, and it is entirely a matter for councillors whether they accept those recommendations. In years past, they haven't always, for good reason, and then we end up after a few years with a mega catching up exercise, which is always somewhat traumatic for all concerned. So it's been very good that of late, after our last big catch up, it has been, there's been a fairly measured approach, which has meant that incrementally we've managed to keep up a bit, which is excellent. But as I say, we only recommend, unlike our parliamentary equivalent. So before I go any further, can I just say thank you to everyone who has contributed to this piece of work, obviously to my two colleagues who have worked extremely hard, to Julia, Karen and their team, and to all those councillors and the leaders of the different groups who have contributed their views. We have never had so many people to the councillors drop in. It was quite astonishing and very welcome. And there was a good response to the survey. We'd like it to be better, but then we always would. So we are grateful for that as well. Anyway, in a nutshell, to get down to what I suspect you are most interested in, you will see, as far as the basic allowance is concerned, which of course we review always, that's our job, and we do it every year. A number of councils, their panels, as I discover, and Julia and Karen will bear out, don't do it every year, but we do because we think that's important. And our recommendation for the basic allowance, as you see, is a modest increase based on 22 hours of council work. We were open to the possibility of that multiplier increasing in view of what we were told anecdotally, but in fact, the survey of members didn't support increasing the hours, and therefore we have stuck to the last national census of councillors across the country, which we think is an objective and consistent measure. So we have ended up with a modest allowance increase of 2.63%, more than last year, but slightly less than the staff award. I have to say in years past, it's been the other way around. But if one's going to be consistent with the methodology, you sort of take what you get really at the end of it. And there is a measure of consistency there. Then every year we are either of our own volition or at the instigation of members or leaders of the different groups as to look at a number of particular issues. This year, those were to consider an allowance for the chair of the Health and Wellbeing Board. And we are, as you see, recommending a special allowance of 0.5 multiplier. We were also asked to consider the chair of Land and Property, and you'll see that we have made a recommendation 0.25. We were asked to consider a special allowance for the vice chairs of scrutiny. We were not persuaded by the evidence for that, and so we have not made a recommendation there. We were also asked to look at expenses. Thanks to Julia's very, very careful and detailed spreadsheets, we were again entirely persuaded that the system is sound and would merely encourage members who are entitled to claim. We did not come across any extremes of claiming, and we are satisfied that that is fit for purpose. I should just say, with regard to the Health and Wellbeing Board, that the current holder of that post, the chair, is not actually a member of the County Council. And I'm going to leave it to Neil and his colleagues to work out whether it's actually possible to pay an allowance to the chair if they are not a member of the council. But we will ask to look at the role, and we do believe that that role merits the 0.5 that we have recommended. And we'll happily leave it to someone else to decide whether that can be implemented for the current post holder. Not for any personal reasons, simply the status and so on. The other burning issue that came up at the meeting, or the drop-in of councillors, is covered in the report, and that concerns the portal. I'm not going to repeat what's there. There's some very sensible suggestions. Well, of course I'd say they were sensible, wouldn't I? I think there's some sensible comments there about how it can best be used and when it's not appropriate to use it and all the rest of it. But I think it's right that we include it because it clearly is preying on a number of members' minds and affects performance and contentment with the job. And finally, can I just say on behalf of my colleagues and myself and me, a thank you to all the councillors for the work you do. We hear every year increasingly concern about a lack of civility in the way you are often spoken to, and the overwhelming sense of the emails, the workload. Social media brings its own pressures as well as its benefits, and we are very grateful to those of you who offer yourself for this work, and would like to say thank you and support these steps that are being taken to ensure you can do your work safely and with as much support as can be reasonably provided. So thank you. I commend the report to the committee with all its recommendations, and I hope and look forward to hearing what you think about it and following its progress. Thank you. Is that all right, Caroline? Have I said too much, too little?
No, you've been perfect, as always, Heather. I can't speak about every aspect of your life, I've no idea. But in relation to this particular meeting, yes. Sorry, I was just being given a note. I'm going to open it up to members of the committee. I've got Michael Fife-Cook for questions, clarifications, comments. Over to you, Councillor Fife-Cook.
Thank you, Heather, for your work on this and also all your people. I know that a lot of effort was put in. The only thing I would say is that just for those who are online or listening to this, can you explain how many councils you look at? You're not just looking at Devon.
Oh, no, indeed. For the benefit of those who haven't got the report, we do benchmark our recommendations against others. Thank you very much. It's on page 19. We do benchmark. I don't like the word benchmark. We look at other shire counties and we look at the local southwest councils. Of course, and on that measure, we're where we think we ought to be, which is at the generous end, but not at the top, which seems a comfortable place to be. Of course, the unitary councils are in a slightly, it's not an apt comparison. So we tend to look more at the shire counties, and on that basis, we're, as I say, not at the top in terms of the allowance, but we're as near the top as we think is appropriate, and it's better to be near the top than the bottom.
If you don't mind me coming back on that, yes, the reason I was asking you that question is that obviously anybody listening to this or seeing this later won't have the report. So it's just basically, I wanted them to understand that you're not just looking at us, you're looking at numerous other councils. So the fact is that your recommendations are based on a great deal more facts than people might conceive.
And as well as the questionnaire for this council, we look at, I attend the meeting of the Southwest chairs for all the councils, and we look also at the facts that they find. So we're looking very broadly within that context. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I ask Councillor Davis to come in, I think it's for any members of the public who are listening who might be interested in looking at the papers, the easiest way to find them is to Google Devon County Council Procedures Committee, and you get all the information there, or indeed for any of the committee, or indeed full council, all out there in the public domain. I encourage people to have a look if they're interested. Thank you. Councillor Davis.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I'd like to mention a point which is in the summary and conclusion page. So I think it's in 12.2, where you talk about the panel. They say that the established framework continues to provide a sound basis for determining fair and consistent remuneration. So I kind of wanted to know a bit more about how you established the fairness point. And the reason, can I finish my question? And the reason I wanted to do that was because well, it comes on to a further point actually about in 12.5, where you talk about maintaining the proportion of members in the SRA.
Yeah.
So, and you wanted to keep it below 50%, and you noted that currently it's around 43%. So that's quite like an acceptable level. But coming back to the point about fairness, I wondered whether you ever did a breakdown in parties within the council. So because when you say that we have a current level of 43% at the moment on SRAs, the level for the Liberal Democrat parties of members who receive an SRA is 66%.
Well, let me take the first point first. You haven't finished yet. Have I got two questions so far?
Sorry?
I think I've got two questions.
No, I haven't even got to my question yet.
All right, all right.
Well, it's actually a whole broad question on fairness.
Yes.
So, and I'm talking about the percentages. So the whole percentages that we look at in SRAs with the Liberal Democrat Party is they have 66% of their members have an SRA. Even in the Green Party, with just their 6 members, they have a percentage of 50% of their members have an SRA. And the Conservatives, 28%. So when we come down to talk about the Reform Party, we have 12.5% of our members have an SRA. So I just wanted to know whether there was any context where you talk about fairness across parties.
So far as, yeah, can I just tell you from the point of view of the panel, we do not look at who the post holders are. We just look at what the scheme is about the post. So the special allowance applies to the post. We do not consider who the post holders are. That's a matter for the political parties to work out. So that's not really our domain. We simply look at what the work of the post attaches.
Okay.
Okay. So that's that point, if I may. On the first point you made, we have for many, well, almost for as long, well, very, very, very many years, we've worked to formula where we take the, I'm going to get median and medium mixed up again, so I'm not going to use the expression, but we take a figure based on the ONS this year, the ONS figure for the average. It used to be called the white collar wage, but that I think is an old hat term. And then we work out the formula that we've used for many years and multiply the that by the number of hours that we think is supported by the evidence in terms of workload. And of course we take off about 33% because of the public, what we call the public service discount, which is a very ugly phrase, but it's in fact reflecting the fact that this work is public service, and that has to be reflected in the allowance. So that is the approach we've taken now. Anything you want to add, Julia and Karen? I think that's a fair summary of how we go about it. But in terms of the political point you make, I'm not going there because that's not our realm. We just look at the roles, not the people who hold them or their parties. Right?
So if I could just come back on the point. So in relation to how the SRAs are allocated, you'll be aware, of course, that this council operates on a cabinet system, which means that however after the election, however many seats are held by each party, negotiations take place, and there is there are 60 of us, so if agreements can be made between different parties or different political groupings to form an administration, then that grouping runs the council and makes the appointments. If I could finish, please. In fact, could you turn your microphone off just for the moment, please? If it will let you, in which case, don't worry about it. Lovely, thank you. So, I mean, I think what you're alluding to perhaps is that there are other governance models within local government. So, if we had at this council a committee system, then allocations would be on a politically proportional basis. Now, I believe, I'm not a lawyer, but I think this goes back to the Local Government Act 1972 and successor.
Local Government and Housing Act 1989.
Oh, sorry, Local Government and Housing Act 1989.
Thank you. Gold star.
Yo. Fantastic. Anyway, but it goes back to the governance model of this council. We are not it is not run on a committee basis, it is on a cabinet basis. So it is not, those are not allocated on that basis, they are allocated by the administration to members within that the administration to enable the work of the council to be taken forward and the political priorities of the administration. So it would be inappropriate for in a cabinet system for a political proportional allocation of cabinet seats, and that's just how the law sets out how councils work. If it was that the council decided that it wanted to go back to a committee system, that would be up to council to decide. But certainly the government of the day is really clear, and it's certainly part of the what's it called, the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, which is currently going through the Lords, that the government's desire is for all councils to move to a cabinet system. Okay. Yes, and then I've got Councillor Hodgson and then Councillor Bailey.
So I am very aware about the cabinet system, and probably my question.
Sorry, could you just hold on half a moment because I can only hear one person at a time.
And perhaps I could just, Councillor Davies, if you have a look at page 30 of the report, you will see there how the group leaders' allowances are apportioned. We do keep an eye on that every year in case they, have to change. That's well, it speaks for itself, I think, how that's done.
Councillor Davis.
Yeah, I'm fully aware of what you're saying about the cabinet system. You have 9 members on cabinet. That doesn't account for a lot of other members within the Liberal Democrat. I'm merely pointing out a fact here, a fact and a statistic, which is not recognised in this document, which talks about fairness. So I just think it's something that could possibly be highlighted if it was of a concern to you, but I suspect it probably isn't of a concern to you.
It's not my decision. It is a matter of the law sets out actually how councils are operated under a cabinet system. So that is how it works. And actually, the decisions about who takes those individual places, it's not my decision. It is the decision of the leader, actually, and that's set out in the constitution as well. So in terms of fairness, I don't know how. If you were looking for a proportional allocation by political party, that actually would take, it would require either the administration to come to an agreement with your group, the leader of the council, and indeed all political parties are perfectly have their rights to talk to each other and to negotiate on this. But there is no requirement for a politically proportionate allocation.
Yeah.
And indeed, one might say that it undermines the process of actually running the organisation. Have you got more questions on this, or can I move on to other councillors?
I've got more questions on the report, but not specifically to this.
Would you mind if I maybe came to other councillors and came back to you, please? Thank you. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. 2 things. One is really around the selection of people for the significant positions, which is what induces an extra, the additional allowance. And I think my understanding when this was all sort of the conversations were going on was that it was meaning that people who had some experience as the councillors, because obviously, as you know, it's 80% was all new councillors, and running a £2 billion budget is a hell of a responsibility. So in terms of like how this sort of feeds in with the new council, I think, the leader did really well actually pulling in people who either had experience on this council in the past, or people who were actually had been part of district councils, in their at that point as well. So it was that point of experience and being able to pick up reins of quite challenging positions. I've certainly found my new cabinet role, which I didn't have before, really, hard work. It's full time. That's why I didn't even come to your meetings about this. I was looking in my diary and think, oh no, I didn't go to those meetings. I had about 3 other things to do that day, and it is busy. But the other thing I would just point out is that it says here about the leader of the Green and Independent group. It actually lists us as 8. We're actually not. We're 6 because there's 2 are not part of the group. But on top of that, you only get 1 allowance. So I don't get that allowance too. I don't take that allowance. I just I just get the cabinet allowance. You only get 1 allowance. That's all I just wanted to make those points.
Thank you, Councillor Hodgson. Councillor Bailey, and then I'll come back to Councillor Davis.
Thank you. It's just about the reference to the meeting with group leaders and committee chairs on the 10th of November. I'm not quite sure what happened because that followed the procedures meeting. So I was at the procedures meeting. I do chair the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Committee, and I'm not sure whether I've missed it or whether I wasn't invited. But also Jackie, Councillor Hodgson, wasn't here, so I could have stepped into her shoes as chair, as deputy, but I'm not quite sure what happened.
I'm going to ask Councillor Jones.
Julia.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry.
I can't do both jobs, thank you. Yeah, no, I can clarify that. We actually invited certain chairs to that particular meeting because it was regarding, as Heather has alluded to, around the specific roles where there were questions around or reviewing those particular chairs. So we could have clarified that a little bit more, but I think within the narrative underneath it, it shows which chairs we were kind of speaking to. But we invited the chair of Health and Wellbeing Board and also the chair of the Land and Property
That's right.
Committee.
We normally only speak to the group leaders.
That's
but because
right.
those 2 committees we'd been particularly asked to look at the roles.
Exactly.
We thought it was right to hear what they had to say to us.
We
We wouldn't normally have committee chairs at all. Michael was there.
Thank you. I'm going to come back to Councillor Davis. Over to you.
I don't know.
I hadn't caught your eye, so you are actually next on my list. So it is over to you, as I say.
Thank you. Yeah. So Jackie's actually just answered my next question about the,
Sorry, for clarification, you mean councillor Hodgson?
sorry.
Thank
I
you.
beg your pardon. Yeah, councillor Hodgson has just clarified the question I had about the Greens and the Independents group. Because as you say, two of them are not independents. I do have another question though about the Land and Properties Committee. So how do you decide that what's so special about that committee that you've decided the chair, another Liberal Democrat, is going to have an SRA? How does that decision arise?
We were asked to look at that role last year, in fact, by the then leader. That's right, isn't it? And it was too late in the day for last year, so we deferred it to this year, on the basis that the work involved in that committee had increased and that the responsibility attaching to the work of that committee had increased, and therefore that it would be appropriate to recognise that. We looked at what other councils did, we looked at the work involved, we looked at the role and its responsibility, and can I just emphasise, we look at the role and what goes with it, not at the person who's holding it, and came to the conclusion that the 0.25 was the appropriate multiplier, and other councils of a similar nature were already recognising, and that was there, also was there. I don't think I think there may have been one council which paid even more, but the majority, we are now in line with the majority of other councils. And I think it's important to understand that as work develops, as organisations develop, as policy changes, different roles become more important, and therefore they merit consideration. Similarly with the Health and Wellbeing Board, it's just how things change. But I'm probably going to be a real bore and say it again. We do not look at who's got the job. I mean, half the time I don't think I know who's got the job until they turn up. All we're interested in is what's the work, what's the responsibility, what's the time commitment, does the role merit an allowance? And that's what we look at. And we were persuaded completely that that was appropriate.
Thank you. You want to come back on that? No, okay. Thank you. So Councillor Fife Cook and then Councillor Bailey, please.
I totally understand where you're coming from, and I see why you're having to do it the way you're doing it. And obviously what we're probably concerned at and looking at more is steps before it comes to you. You're dealing with the information as it comes to you. And I think you do a good job on that. And normally I wouldn't say that if I didn't think you did. The problem is I always think, how is information perceived by the public? And as a councillor, we all know that many members of the public feel that we get brown envelopes or rather large allowances for doing next to nothing. We all know that's rubbish. Anybody who's committed to do whatever you're doing, whatever colour suit you wear. But the fact is we have to accept the perceptions of what many of the public feel. So I think it's absolutely fine what you've done. But I think also that it might be quite good to advertise more the fact of how we, to have total transparency. If people are not happy with that, that's absolutely fine. I don't mind doing that. So thank you very much for your efforts.
I'm actually going to come back in on that. So, I mean, I would say that if anybody out there has any evidence or suspicions that there is corruption going on amongst any councillors at any level, actually get some evidence, go to the police, because corruption is not lawful. We are not in the business of that. I mean, I would comment that, I mean, I sit on the planning committee on another council, for which I get no additional allowance at all, which is fine. It strikes me that if anywhere there is somewhere which would be potential for inducements, the district council level have you know, the allowance of £5,000 a year for that, actually that would lay you open. I think that there has been that in the past, and there's been a lot of process to make sure that that's tidied up, and it's not the case. And we are given, I think, across the board at all councils, I think we are given very clear advice. And if ever we need any advice from officers, we can come to advice. And I'd encourage anyone to come to our monitoring officer. If anybody approaches anybody with any idea of inducements or anything of that ilk, but the public perception, I think it is inevitably going to be there for people who are not involved in a deep way as we are within councils. Public perception is not necessarily always based on what actually the facts of the matter are. And I think it's down to each and every one of us to be really clear with members of the public who contact us about what the roles and responsibilities are and the remuneration that goes with that, which I have to say is a surprise to members of the public who raise this issue with me. I think there is the expectation there's a lot of money. However, I can see that Heather is wanting to come in on this point as well.
Well, only to say, thank you, Michael. But that is why it's so important that the panel is independent. That's why the government set up, it's precisely because of those concerns that the government set up the panel to be independent, non-political, and that's why it's important to maintain our independence, which is why I say our job is to do the work, make the recommendation, and then the political and other consequences are over to you.
Chair, can I just add also that members' allowances are also published as well on the website. So members of there is a transparent process there, and as with all of the reports that the allowances panel do, they are published on our website as well. So last year's will be on there, where we talked about the land and property share as well in that particular report as well. So it's all there. And of course, if members have got any questions ahead of any meetings and need any clarification, they can come to us at any time and we can help and point them in the right direction.
Thank you. That's very helpful. And again, I would just reiterate, if anyone wants to look at the members' allowances or any committees, Google Devon County Council and go from there. I can see that.
In terms of the advertising, the law actually requires us to put an advert in the paper as well, promoting that the allowances scheme has been reviewed and what the major changes are. So we do that every year as well, following its approval or otherwise.
That's really helpful. So I think there's no doubt the information is out there, and if people want to search for it, they can find it. And indeed, yeah, absolutely. And I think it is also worth noting in this forum, which any member of the public is able to come to in person or turn up online, that what we as councillors get as income is an allowance. It's not a salary. So it is really worth noting that we do not get pension contributions to pensions. We do not have yet, although that's yet to go through Parliament. We do not get national insurance contributions. So, you know, it is not the same as a salary. We have the 33% public service discount, which means that whatever the amount of money is judged adequate for the job or fair for the job. A third of that goes because it is the public service element. So I would encourage anybody who wants to know more about the numbers to Google or indeed to speak to us as councillors, and we can speak with officers clearly. Okay. So Councillor Davis.
Yeah, my original point was about fairness, and I didn't mention anything about corruption, and I don't believe there is any, and that wasn't a point.
With respect, it was Councillor Fivecook who raised that.
So I just wanted to make my point about that. I also make the point about the allowance. I actually think the allowance is very generous, personally, and I don't believe councillors need it any more than that. And that was the point that I made in my survey. I would question that under local government reorganisation, but once again, you've made a reference to the fact that the allowances, the SRA allowances, are to do with workload. Now, once again, I find myself sitting in a room of councillors, six councillors. I'm the only one who doesn't have an SRA. I sit on 6 committees and I have 22 parishes. So I do have a decent workload. I'm not asking for more money. I'm just trying to be transparent here and say, we talked about how it's important for the public that there's transparency. So when the public look at it and there's 12% of Reform councillors who have a special allowance, and there's 66% of Liberal Democrats who have a special allowance, that is really what all I'm asking you is consider the perception of that. That's all I'm saying.
So thank you for that. So first of all, let me just be clear that the special responsibility allowance is, as the name suggests, for additional responsibility. It's not for additional workload, although there is workload that goes with that additional responsibility. So it's a slightly different thing than you've presented. That's the fact of the matter, Councillor Davis. You know, that's what it is. And it is entirely reasonable that if we are asking someone who has an additional responsibility, for example, being in having the oversight of everything of a particular area of the council, that should be some recompense for that. Because for you personally, I'm really thrilled that you consider the amount of money that you get from being a county councillor as sufficient. For those people who are perhaps let me put it this way. There are many people, and I think it's borne out in the survey responses. There are many councillors for whom the time that is taken to do this means that actually paid work that has to be given up, and so it's a bit of a recompense. Now, if we were all rich and independently wealthy, or pensions or whatever, and owned our own homes, probably we wouldn't need an allowance. But actually there has been a conscious effort, not just in this council, but across the country, and I think this is being considered by government at the moment, about how do we make sure that we have the most diverse group of people who can represent our communities, not just people who are able to cope without the income that allows them to take the time to do the job properly. And we want all councillors to do the job properly. I think I've covered that. I think I had Jess Bailey, you were my next person. Then I've got Councillor. No, if you couldn't, I've then got Michael Cook, Councillor Fife Cook, forgive me, and then I'll come back to you, Councillor Davis. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to thank Heather for the report. It's very comprehensive, it's very clear. I'd like it to be just to the amendment to go in the minutes, which chairs were invited, so that it's clear that it wasn't all chairs. It's really difficult talking about allowances for yourself, and you know, I do receive an SRA as a chair, but I think broadly speaking, I'm supportive of the recommendations. They seem reasonable and fair.
Is that a proposer?
I'm happy to propose
thank
them.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I would just query just 2 points. That is whether our officers can advise us on an SRA is possible for a special responsibility allowance is possible for someone who's not a member of the council. That's the first question. And the second question is, there's a recommendation that the SRAs stay below 50%. So do we tip into above 50% if we have SRAs for those 2 other chairs? No. Okay. Thank you.
I think just to clarify, we are looking at exactly that point of whether or not we can go for a non-member. We're not quite there yet, but that advice will follow. No, it's a good puzzle to give. So we're not quite there. We're just thinking that through.
Do you want me to just pick up on that? Sorry, on the answer to Councillor Bailey's question regarding the SRAs. The SRA for the Land and Property Chair actually started last year. So we were actually reviewing, the allowances panel were reviewing in terms of whether that was still fit for purpose for this year, which, you know, is in the narrative in the report. And so it's only one additional chair proposal for this particular for Health and Wellbeing Board Chair, and it will then the percentage will be about 46%. Okay.
Thank you. Now I think it's Councillor Fife Cook, then Councillor Davis, and then Councillor Hodgson. So Councillor Fife Cook.
Thank you. I'd just like to make it absolutely clear. I was not saying there is corruption in council. What I'm saying is that it's foolish not to understand what the perception of the public can be. You know, when you get outside these walls and you go to a pub, you go to a club, you go to a parish council meeting, people's concepts of basically what we earn and what we do sometimes are quite ludicrous. We all know that. The problem is that I am a strong believer in the truth, however unpalatable that may be. So I think that when it comes to allowances, when it comes to special allowances, I think that should be really publicised to everybody. And sometimes I think we are unrealistic when we say, oh, well, it's on the Devon County Council website, the figures are all there. Most people who are angry at us as councillors because they don't think we've fixed something, they won't spend their time looking at what the information is. They will come to a conclusion over a pint. All I'm saying is that we should be mindful of that. Let's use that word in the right context, that people think differently than us, and we should always be minded to try and explain ourselves better so that they understand that we're not in this to make money. No councillor is in it to make money. It would be a foolish occupation to do, but I do think that sometimes we don't explain ourselves very well, and we should do better at that. Thank you.
I think that's a really valid point, that actually it's down to each and every one of us to be as open and transparent and clear with members of the public who talk to us about, you know, I mean, as Councillor Fife Cook says, for anyone to be a councillor in order to make financial gain, there are many ways probably that are more effective and still legal, and like getting a job, for example. You know, but it is down to each and every one of us to be truthful about, you know, what we do get and the amount of responsibility that we have and the amount of time that goes into it and so on and so forth. And I would say that that's verbally in any written communications that we put out on social media, that, you know, whenever we come across people, our role is as representatives of the communities who vote us in, and we all have a responsibility to assist the council officers and those in charge, those who put the website together, to make sure that that is transparent. And I'm not going to comment on members of the public and how they find information out, because people will find out information in all sorts of different ways, and all we can do is to be consistent and to be based on the facts which are published. Okay. Councillor Davis, you're next.
Yeah, it was just a quick point of clarification. I do have another job. I do actually do other work. So I just wanted to point that out. Your implication was that some people are wealthy enough to be councillors. I'm not one of those, so I do have another job.
Thank you. And I imagine that your diary is as complicated as the rest of us. I mean, I think, you know, just reflecting back on the previous administration, you know, I was first elected in 2021 to this council. The election in May 2025, bless you, saw a considerable change, not just in terms of 80% of councillors being new councillors, but actually the average age has reduced significantly. I think that personally, I think that is a really good thing. I mean, we now have councillors in their 20s. Good, fantastic. We get a different view, a different voice. We have a variety of different people, many of whom do work. I also work, as I know other people in this room also work. But actually, frankly, it's necessary because, you know, we all live in a world, we've got our bills to pay and so on and so forth. So thank you for that clarification. Councillor Hodgson.
Thank you. So first of all, I just wanted to second the proposal from Councillor Bailey, and also again to echo the, you know, the thanks to your work. I know it's not an easy job, is it? Fiddling around with these little percentages and trying to make sure it sort of fits in every category. The other thing I would say, I don't see it as an us and them. I think we're all part of this together. Sorry, I don't see, I mean, there's reference to kind of, you know, as if we're separate to the people out there. We're all part of it together. Very much so. And certainly when I go to my 5 town and parish councils every month, and I go to a lot of other meetings as well, but for them, I actually produce a written report, and it's a report that just basically gives a good, hopefully a good account of what's going on here. So when we're now the budget time, I'll set out what the budget looks like and the deliberations and why it may rise and what might be taken into account and what the challenges are and how the government's, bit that's coming in. I was at Staverton Parish Council last night at 9:30, a bit tired because I've been here all day. And it was, they were asking a lot of questions and it's brilliant, and that's good. And I think that is really something that we can really offer as our kind of intermediary role between being here and working with officers and also bringing that information to members of the public, because it's not just the parish council that sits at Staverton every month, it's a whole range of members of the public, and it's really good. I think and it helps people to recognise and I think respect what we do as councillors, and also what the challenges for the officers, and trying to sort of consistently work with reducing monies for bigger problems. And of course the old pothole thing always comes up, and it's and that's inevitable because we haven't had the money to do some of the maintenance, so people are angry. And we're the ones that end up in the firing line. But actually, I think if you give a good account of what's going on and say, well, look, we're just doing what we can. And also the fact we do lobbying as well to try and make it better with our MPs, etc. So I think there's, it's an important role that we have. And I think it's something that we shouldn't feel somehow that, people don't like it, because I think they respect what we're trying to do with what we have.
Thank you. And I know there are, particularly in Devon, where we have a large rural, I think we're one of the largest rural councils in the country, that there are many of our members who attend an awful lot of parish council meetings. And I'm lucky, I only have 3, but some I know have getting on for 30. Gosh, that's quite a challenge. So I would like to thank all of the county councillors who attend all of those meetings and keep their communities in touch with what's going on. I am going to move this on, if I may. I've got a proposer and a seconder. I would also like the minutes to note my, and indeed I think the committee's, thanks to not only Heather but to the other panel members. Sorry?
And our staff colleagues.
Indeed, and indeed the staff members who assist the panel and provide information. Have we got any more questions or comments about the recommendations? No, in which case I'll going to move to the vote. So these are the recommendations as set out at paragraph 12.5 of this report, page 28 of the report, and there are a whole bunch of recommendations which I know we will all have read. So all those in favour? Yep, I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much. I am very grateful to you for coming. Well, I hope you feel better. I hope you feel better soon. Yes. You take care. Thank you. Will you pass on our thanks to the other panel members? That's most kind of you. Thank you. Okay, lovely. So. Moving on then to agenda item 6, and I know Councillor Mitchell, you're here for this particular item. Now, I'm going to actually deal with this in a different way than was perhaps anticipated at the outset of the putting of the agenda together. Since publication of this agenda item, I've had a number of representations and questions and so on and so forth about this item, which is about the review of the governance working group and proposed changes to the Highways and Traffic Orders Committees, known as HATOCs. And I think there have been sufficient questions raised about this that it is worth the issue about how HATOCs work in a slightly broader way than just looking at the voting rights of district and city council members on it, and that there are some wider issues than that. So I am going to move to defer this item to our next meeting, which is on the 23rd of April 2026, so that there can be a broader exploration about a number of issues. I'm so sorry about this, Councillor Mitchell, but so that there can be a broader exploration about a number of issues surrounding hattocks. This particular report is about one very specific legal aspect of the ways that hattock work, and the recommendations, the intention is for them to go to the full council meeting in May, I guess.
The AGM.
At
is
the
where we do all
AGM.
the committee appointments.
Yeah, thank you, which is it's 28th of May, I believe. So we have time for there to be further work on this and broader issues around hattocks before we get to the point of discussing this specific issue, and it can still go to council. I'm happy to expand on reasons if people would like me to, but I'm not sure which of you put your hand up first. Councillor Hodgson, please.
Thank you. I agree this should be deferred. To be frank, I think, we could keep on chewing our way through this one for the next 2 years, but in 2 years' time, the district councils will disappear anyway. And I kind of feel, in a way, let sleeping dogs lie. I've been on Hattock and attending Hattock meetings since 2009. Well, I only actually joined in 2011, but I think they're really important local meetings. And I think there's an element of, I know that sometimes they can be quite contentious and by default very interesting, but I think feeling that we're taking away representation could undermine the very confidence in the, albeit to some extent, storm in a teacup decisions that end up being made at Hattock. Some of them are bigger than that, but some of them are fairly local. And I think it's an opportunity for people to feel that the view has been kind of well discussed, similar, in a way to some of the planning decisions, because they can be quite contentious when it's, just might seem almost somebody's old parking space around the corner or a parking, residence parking scheme or something. But I do think that they can be quite, sort of hot and contentious. And I think I would just recommend that we defer it to 2027.
Just before I come to you, Councillor Fife Cook, am I taking that as proposing that we defer this to the next meeting? Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Davis, thank you. I just wanted to sort of set out a little bit about, and maybe we take these items and I'll tell you my thoughts about what we need to do in preparation for the next procedures meeting and some of the areas of discussion that would be useful. I've got Councillor Mitchell also on the list. So at the moment, who have I got? I have got Councillor Fife Cook. Who was next? I didn't spot who was next. I don't know, Councillor Davis, if you wanted to speak on this, or that was just a second. In which case, if you don't mind, I'm going to go Councillor Bailey and then to Councillor Mitchell. Councillor Fife Cook.
Thank you. I agree. This is far too big a subject to squash in. We are getting a bit tight here, and I think more time should be deferred to it. But I would also say I've never known Councillor Mitchell come to any meeting without adding value to it. So I would like to hear what he says. I would just ask him to keep it as short as humanly possible, and then we can keep it in our mind. Thank you.
I will endeavour to chair the meeting that allows all councillors to have their say and all councillors to use our time wisely. On that point, Councillor Bailey.
Thank you. I think it is sensible to defer it, not probably to 2027, because we never know what's happening with LGR. So we need to crack on as best we can and get our committees into the best shape they possibly can be. So I think it does need to be a wider review. I think our district council colleagues, certainly in my Hattock, they really add value. So I wouldn't really want to lose them. But I think can potentially be a bit of confusion about kind of highways responsibilities. So I think it does need to be looked at. Happy to defer it to the next meeting. So if there's been I think it's already been seconded, so I don't need to do that, but I agree.
Thank you. Councillor Mitchell.
Thank you, Chair. I have to declare an interest in that, as like all of you, I serve on Hattock, but I have the pleasure, I think it's called, of being chair of Exeter Hattock, which I should point out is non-remunerated. So just in case that I've got no pecuniary interest in regard to this item, I'd just like to make a general procedures point, first of all, in that any member is required to give notice under standing orders to attend any meeting to speak on an item. I did so according to standing orders. One, I have never received an acknowledgement in regard to that application, so that's why I've turned out. I am fortunate that I live in Exeter. I could equally have spent an hour and a half travelling here to find an item was being deferred, and it would have been helpful, I think, as we had a similar item at a committee I was chairing yesterday, if knowledge could have been given to the member, then they could decide whether they wish to come or not, or pass a message on. I've had to cancel other meetings to attend this morning. So that's the procedure point. In regard to Hattock generally, I am concerned, as I say, that as an authority, the day is the launch of the public consultation on LGR for Devon. Our bid is one of those, the Devon County Council bid is one of those being considered. And a key element of that bid is the concept of neighbourhood committees. So I do find it strange that at this meeting, we are discussing taking people off representing their communities who are elected in those posts that can add value to decision making. Now, I understand there is a legal problem, an issue about joint committees and whatever, but I think we have enough legal talent and we pay them sufficiently in the council for them to come up with options available for us. So my own personal view is that I support the continuation of Hattock as it is. My other concern, I think, is Councillor Fife Cook has said, especially in the light of LGR, is this the biggest issue that this county council has got to deal with in the next 12 months, etc. If it is working and working reasonably well, leave alone. I think not the issue with Hattock, which is both a blessing and a blight, is it is rural democracy. I can only talk from the Exeter perspective, but I literally see more people attending Hattock meetings than Exeter City Council meetings or committee meetings of this council. I see more public participation in Hattock, not always friendly or supportive, but we see that participation. We do not see that across the board in other areas. And it does seem to me that there is a danger of a slippery slope, that this ends up becoming a delegated matter for a member and an officer and the public are shut out. So I do agree with you, Chair, that it does need a broader look. We have to look at the terms of reference, etc. on this. And in regard to district councillors, I've spoken to some district councillors who are more than happy not to be on it, because they do find it a poison chalice. They're fed up with the emails, the abuse, when they make a decision that one group or another do not support. So there are different aspects to it. And also the view that some councillors, because they sit on a lower tier authority, cannot put items on the agenda, etc. I think if they're voting members, they're equal status members, unless you're going to give them proportionately half a vote, therefore, or whatever. But if they are voting members, they should have that ability to put forward items. And if not, there's ways of doing it. They can do it through the chair, they can do it through the neighbourhood county councillor if the item is that important. It can be raised as urgent item through the chair. So it is not an effective way of isolating Hattock from people putting items on the agenda. And as I say, my view is, yes, let's have a look at it. But personally, I think we've got more urgent things to do in the next 12 months than reform the structure of Hattock. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mitchell. I have Councillor Bukowski online with his hand up. So if I could hand over to you, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, as you're aware, I'm the chairman of the governance working group which produced this report. I'd just like to say, obviously, within your gift to defer it, and the governance working group will be happy to do any further work that you wish us to do. I just want to raise a point of clarity, because I've heard a couple of times now mentioned that the intention or the proposal is to remove district councillors from these committees. That is not the case. The district councillors will still be able to sit on the committee, still be able to contribute, but it is to do with their voting rights, which is a legal issue. And I would have to say that this has not just come about now. It has been something that has been rumbling on for a number of years. So I just want that to be very clear, that nowhere in the proposal is it suggesting the removal of district councillors or indeed town and parish representation via DALC. Thank you, Chair.
And thank you for that clarification. I think that's helpful. I think what I'm hearing is we all have views on these things. What I'm going to propose is that, as I say, Councillor Hodgson has proposed that we defer this to the next procedures committee on the 23rd of April 2026, so that the decisions from this committee can then go to the annual meeting of the council. 28th of May, I believe, is the date. Anyway,
It's definitely late in May.
it's
this
late
year.
in
It's
May.
late 'cause the county
Um,
shows move.
Councillor Mitchell, quickly,
Quickly on a
please.
point of order, this came to this committee via the governance committee. Does it have to go back to governance before it comes here again? That's just a point of clarification.
I was just going to cover that. So I was actually how I was going to cover that was to go to officers to ask their advice. But there are a number of different issues which have certainly come to my attention in the last week of people coming to talk to me. I should declare an interest. I'm a chair of HATOC, and indeed, in the interest of transparency, there is no special responsibility allowance for chairs of HATOC. Although, in my experience, they are, as Councillor Mitchell sets out, they are the most feisty and some might say exciting or frightening, depending on your viewpoint. They are the best attended meeting of any council meeting of any committee other than the planning committee about particularly controversial issues. So they are an important committee, and they are actually a committee that talk about stuff that people really care about. But my proposal is for there to be certainly a review that involves bringing together the chairs of HATOCs, and I don't know how we do that, but we will find a process for doing that. I'm not sure I'm able to answer the question about whether this goes through the governance working group, because I'm sure they've got a work plan. We will find a way. I'm not sure that I know what it is. So maybe if I could ask Karen Strand to speak to that, and then I will come to Councillor Bailey. Thank you.
Yeah, from a governance perspective, there is no requirement for it to go to governance working group first. However, what I would say is, given the work they've already put in, not only this time, but in the previous administration as well, we would want to find a way of engaging with the governance working group, whether that was a formal meeting or some other mechanism. I think that'd be really important, given the amount of time and effort they've put in already. Yeah.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. I was going to ask what will happen after this meeting. How will the kind of magic happen that a proposal will be found that could be potentially acceptable, because people have such strong views on it, and you know, individual councillors who aren't necessarily chair or vice chair of HATOC or aren't necessarily on the governance working group. I just wondered how all members are going to be involved.
Thank you. And I think we're going to probably have to come back to you, but any comment at this point?
I think we've got a lot of work to do. I think there's a proposal to get the views of sort of the chairs of the HATOCs. I'm also getting views from my staff who, you know, are experiencing issues with the HATOC. We want to engage with the highways officers again. There are some issues there in some particular areas, and I think just to get all of the bugs on the table, so to speak, try and get everyone's views. And I think until we've got that, we're not clear on a way forward. As Councillor Bailey rightly says, this has been quite divisive, and obviously it's still quite divisive, and obviously there's going to be some legal considerations to look at as well. So I think we need to start by consulting, gathering views, starting to formulate a plan of action in terms of how we deal with this. And I think that might be a little bit more organic, depending on the views that come out. Is that okay?
Councillor Davis.
Just wanted to know, will the legal question about the district councillors' voting rights, will that be sorted out by the April meeting?
We are deferring this item to the April meeting. So
yeah, that's what I'm asking. Is the question about
we'll pick it up at the next meeting. I'll pick it up and we'll have some advice from me on that.
But it won't be resolved by then.
Well, it can't be, because this committee won't be meeting again before that unless we have a special meeting.
Okay, that's fine. Can I ask another question? If we were to go LGR and we become a unitary council, there wouldn't be district councillors, and this whole discussion, it has a different flavour, doesn't it, really? So would we not be deferring it till then?
What we're doing now as a county council is we deal with the county council committees. When it comes to the discussions around neighbourhood governance models, there is lots of conversation. I would encourage people to take part in the consultation, which, as has been mentioned, opens today. One of the other things that I do as well as a councillor, I'm involved with the local government association, looking at this and working with the Lords and to explore the practical issues around the English Devolution and Community Empowerment Bill, to try to ensure that decision making is as close to communities as it can possibly be. I'm not going to bore you with my views on the bill. We could be here for a few hours, if not days or weeks, but I think it is a relevant issue further down the road in terms of the discussions about the neighbourhood governance model. But at this point, this council has to look at this committee within the context of how it operates legally and practically and democratically. Any more on this one? Okay, in which case I'm going to move to the vote that as proposed. Do we have a wording, or do you need a wording, or have we?
No, we've just moved and seconded to defer the item pending
Yeah.
further work and consultation, something that's.
Thank you, that's really
all of
helpful. You're happy with that? And Councillor Bailey, happy with it? So I'm going to, all those in favour? Okay, is unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, and thank you, Councillor Mitchell, for your attendance. And I can, and indeed for the comments and the contribution you've made to this meeting, as you do to HATOX, obviously, as a county councillor.
I look forward to the next meeting.
We shall welcome you then as well. Thank you. Okay, so can I move us next on to agenda item 7, which is the protocol to follow up responses to supplementary questions. All will have read the report, I'm sure. Who is, and please, I'm handing over to the Assistant Director of Democratic Services. I must learn your titles, I'm so sorry. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Hopefully this is fairly straightforward. In essence, it's a tidying up exercise. We've done a lot of work recently about rewriting our petition scheme and putting some more some deadlines in there in terms of when members of the public can expect responses. This is in the same vein. We're conscious that when we have supplementary questions at council cabinet, you know, the cabinet member will say, I will get back to you, and this could be a councillor question or a member of the public, and we thought it'd be helpful to put not an I hate the word SLA, so we've called it a protocol, but right into the public participation scheme and right into sort of cabinet questions processes in the constitution, when people can expect an acknowledgement and when people can expect a full reply. I think it just comes to courtesy, really, common courtesy. So it's a tidying up exercise more than anything, and the governance working group have reviewed this matter.
And can I thank officers and indeed the governance working group for their work on this. And I'm going to come to Councillor Bailey.
Thank you very much. I think, yes, it is helpful because I have found that I've asked supplementaries and I haven't had a response. I've had oh, we'll follow it up, and then it hasn't been followed up. But one thing I also think is important is that when the answer is given, it's somehow published, because I'm often quite interested in other people's the responses to supplementaries. So how can we ensure that they are put as a record with the minutes? Because you could have a situation where somebody doesn't, well, you know, just to be open and transparent that what that answer is. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to go back to officers for that response.
Yeah, technically that's possible. Probably a supplementary pack or something following the meeting. That's fairly straightforward to do. I think what would be good is if we have 2 or 3, we do it as one paper, and we just call it something like follow-up actions or responses to supplementary questions, and publish that. You know, several days after the meeting when all the responses have come in, we can do that. It's not a problem.
Thank you. That sounds good.
Councillor Hodgson.
So just to pick up on that, I'm assuming that would then go on with the minutes of the meeting, like, you know, on the, so they could all sitting together. Thank you. That will be helpful. You're quite right. There's being supplementaries that I've sought, you know, the extras too. Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Any more for any more? Nope. In which case, do I have a proposer for this? Councillor Hodgson, seconder? Councillor Bailey. Move to the vote. All those in favour? Lovely. Unanimous again. Lovely. In which case, I think that is the end of the meeting. In which case, can I just thank you for your attendance, for your contributions, and I look forward to the next meeting, which, as we're discussing Hattock, may well be a more exciting meeting than we usually have about procedures. We were talking earlier, actually, this is not part of the meeting, but we were talking earlier about this actually is